Good morning. Thank you for being here. Um, I I'm going to share some things today that I hope that I don't start crying on you. So I've been praying for that, and but really praying for that a lot. Yes. So, but some of the things that I'm going to share with you are very personal, and I thought a lot about what to call this talk because this is different than anything I've ever really done before. Usually, as a physician and a teacher, because I've been in academics for basically 25 years, I've always researched all the articles and all the journals and get up to speed on the latest of everything. And this is so different than anything I've done before, but it was the one thing that I just kept going back to. And so I think it's what I'm supposed to present. I don't have any conflicts of interest, and you get see me credit for this. And this is really about spirituality and stress related to medical illness. And so a special thank to Father Lazard. Um, I just wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him and my daughter and Creighton and PCA. Okay, I'm already crying. All right, give me a moment. So I always start with objectives. That's part of my uh, academic training. And so I just put together a spirituality working definition because I just didn't know. Lots of people are from different faiths. So just making sure that I was inclusive to people. And then stress in the inedible storm. We're good now. Thank you very much. And then storytelling, lots of different stories. The main one is about my daughter, but just stories that help you guys and help me in my journey, to offer comfort and healing. So I like this picture. It actually came with the slide deck when I was looking for things. And it just made me think about like life and how this person on this board is like everything seems to be going along great. Life is really good. You're like San Diego, you know, catching some waves. But in reality, that person can like totally tumble everywhere and be crashing down and be dragged out to sea and die. So, but this is a perfect example of how fragile we are, but even how strong we are to weather some of those things. So I really like the picture. So here's spirituality. Um, I think you heard a lot from Father Dolan, but the body has a spirit, mind, body, and spirit. It's what makes us human. It is for some how we know we're alive. I really thought about what does it mean to be spiritual, and for me, it's a connection to God. For others, it's a connection to some higher form or being. And for some, it's a connection to nature, even. I was researching that. I'm like, that's really how some people feel spirituality. And for many, it's where we look for answers to life's existential questions like life and death and the meaning of life. So, being in tune with your spirituality can carry you through the storms of life if you're really tapping into that and helping you deal with stress. And again, what that looks like for you may be different from me, as there's many different faiths. And so I just say for myself, I believe in God. I believe in the Trinity of Jesus Christ, the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. And I'm just coming from that perspective, I'll share with you my journey. And I'm hopeful that it will inspire you to walk in yours more deeply, because yours might be different from mine. But regardless of your faith, I believe we can learn from each other and support each other. So, in the middle of the storm, when life's at its most stressful points, what in your faith do you hold on to? And this is where I wanted to make it interactive, but I decided just to write the answers that I thought were pertinent. So if you all feel inclined, you can add to this. But what has been helpful? Confiding in a friend, going to counseling. I had never done that before. It is helpful. Going to church. For some, it's going to the mosque or temple. Having a mentor or a guide. Meditation, prayer. What's harmful? What doesn't work? Stress eating. For me, it's stress not eating. I think I lost 10 pounds in like a month. I could barely walk. Gossip, that doesn't help. Negativity, um, assuming malintent, thinking that someone has it out for you when they're just going along their day and trying to do their best and bad things happen. The God complex, an illusion of being in control of what happens. Like, oh, if I would have just done this or just done that, that's not helpful. And then maladaptive behaviors that we all know very well because we treat patients with these all the time, alcohol, drugs, and addictions, and we all have plenty of those. And so those are not helpful. And those are things people turn to. But I would say the first part is a lot more helpful and is what has allowed me to survive, keep my job, keep my family. Even if I was going to lose my daughter, that I would have the rest of my family. So then I'm turning to stress and healthcare. Um, Illness is stressful. It doesn't matter if it's you or your friend or your loved one, but it's a lot closer to you when it's your loved one, but it's very, very stressful. As a physician, it's stressful seeing people go through things. It's stressful if you lose somebody. It's stressful if you're a caregiver for a loved one. Like every little thing that they have or not going to have that day is depending on you because they can't do anything for themselves at this point. And then I would say an extra complexity is being in healthcare as a physician or a nurse or a pharmacist, technologist of any sort. And there's so many people in healthcare that you don't even realize. They're like the ones that you can't see, but they're all there making a difference. And things that they do or don't do will affect you. Um, so that's stress. And then anybody who's in the presence of someone struggling, it doesn't feel good when something's going wrong or bad. You feel like you don't even know what to say or what to do. And so I would say health is one of the most, like when you have it, it's great, but when it's not and it's failing, and we're all going to die someday, and we will all grieve and we will all have trauma through that process. So that is setting the background. For health providers, we make decisions every day, sometimes even every hour, that will affect the lives of others, whether I turn on the IV fluids or I keep them off, whether I give them diuretics or started the antibiotics on time, whether somebody got to them in the time that they needed to transfer wherever they needed to go. And that is a heavy burden to carry if you're alone. But I have learned you are not alone. And I have known it throughout my entire professional life. But it's definitely something that I need to be reminded of. So the other things are when something goes wrong and a patient has a bad outcome, and I've had patients die on me, and it may have been my fault. And it may have not been my fault. So when something goes wrong, I need to be louder. I need a better mic.
Maybe.
Okay.
Check it out.
Can you guys hear me in here? Okay. When something goes wrong and they have a bad outcome, or when the patient is a family member of one of your colleagues, I've taken care of family members of the surgeons who have taken care of my child, believe it or not. That's a little stressful. And when the roles are reversed, when you are the person that needs help, or it's your family member, I'm a physician, and when I am the patient, or when my family is, all of those things are added complexities. So this one is a really, this is kind of almost the beginning of when I started practicing medicine. I was in the PICU, and I labeled this peace amongst the chaos. This is not Amy, but this is what she looked like. I found a picture on the internet of a child on a left ventricular assist device. And it was, that just looks horrible, doesn't it? And that's a nightmare that you never want to try to be a part of, but that's what you're taking care of that morning. But Amy actually wasn't my patient. And, but I was on the PICU, and it was my last month of residency, believe it or not, or of medical school. It was my last month of medical school. And there was just so much peace in Amy's room. I was just pulled in there, and I was just like, wow, it's just so peaceful in there. There's not this crazy mix of, like there's just like a sense, or, you can feel it. So I walked in there and I spoke to her father, And it was just quiet, and he was not all freaked out. But this is something that would freak you out, you know, like look at her chest. She has like a bandage on top of it, but literally there is a device that's pumping her heart. That's what these little things are on the bottom. They're actually running to a machine that's circulating her blood, because she had had the biggest heart attack that I'd ever seen to this day on an EKG. So I wrote this out so I wouldn't forget it, but it was the conversation and like what transpired that day and that later that night. Um, Amy's father, her name is Amy, but I won't say her last name. She's still alive today, by the way, and doing great. But he started talking about how she was such a blessing to their family, and that their other kids had actually started praying and started to like talk about how Amy was gonna do something important in this world, and how this situation would impact many people. And one of those people was me. It was actually me. Later that night, I was on call, and that was when we did 24-hour call. You know, even as medical students, we did. We don't do that anymore. Our residents don't even do it. But anyways, I remember I had met the father earlier that day, just wandering into the room by myself, and that later that night, they were standing outside the call room talking. And so I just felt like I could just join the conversation somehow. And they were talking about, you know, just their faith and prayer. And it was just so positive. And I was like, wow, I need more of that. And it had been a long time since I really, you know, even at that time, I was probably 27, um, 27 or 28, that I had really even thought about God. And that was like my first introduction to the power of prayer in healthcare, and how important it was. And I met other physicians who actually pray with their patients. And so that was where that impacted me. So, and it made me realize how our lives are meant to teach us something, and how we're meant to be there for each other. And Amy connected me. Amy, a 6-week-old little baby, connected me to other people. It was because of her condition and what I saw across the room that I entered her room, and maybe it was God pulling me in there. Amy, who couldn't even talk. And so God, that's what God does. He just brings people into your life to do these things. And so it would be many years in the future where I would walk through a storm that looked just as bad as that. Seriously, as bad as that only prayer could carry me through. So I can't believe we're all talking about food all the time. We just must be foodies at this conference. But I had something in here too, not even knowing what someone else was going to talk about. But feeding our souls, which is really important. We all know that your body is healthier if you eat well. Like if you have diabetes and you eat a healthy diet, your diabetes is well controlled, as we would say. So that's the same thing for your soul, like having an access to a constant supply of spiritual food. This is food for thought. It's what we spend our minds thinking about and how we feel. It's how you spend your time thinking and feeling, and that is what you're feeding with spirituality. So, thinking back on times where you felt there was no control, when you're caring for another person's health as part of the healthcare team. This is where I was, you know, just thinking about what kind of things were you eating? What kind of things did you turn to? What kind of things do you turn to? I don't know if anyone has thoughts about what they do when they're super stressed out. Anything? Eating. Yeah, that's your favorite. What do you typically do when you like need to fix something? You need to fix something, fix your mind, fix your body, fix something. You're stressed.
Me, it's fixing on social media and current events. It's a kind of an unhealthy escape.
Yeah, how's that go for you? Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me feel worse than you.
Yeah, it does. It does me too. I stopped watching a lot of news.
I'll watch true crime. You know, there's like whole networks, and so I'll just sit for hours and hours and watch all sorts of people murdering each other.
Watching murder.
It's not a healthy choice,
Yeah,
but it almost makes me feel like, listen, you might not even know that.
yeah,
These people have it worse than I do, so yeah, just check out, you know.
yeah. And so whenever that time is over, like what have you learned when you look back? And what I've learned is when I'm in the eye of the storm, I need to trust in God. And I literally need to surrender because I'm a control freak. I mean, I just want to have like my schedule, and I even like put out what I'm going to wear the next morning. I just like have everything, I have a list and I have more list and I have more list. And, it doesn't work that way. I really had to let go. And that was difficult for me, but I feel like I feel so much more peaceful even when bad things are happening. And it was really hard for me to let go because so much was out of my control. So this is about my daughter and my journey to surrender. Um, I have a favorite Bible verse, and it says, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, Philippians 4:13. It might be like a few of my passwords or something, it's like literally like, well, yeah, there's a lot of extra symbols, so you'll never get it. But anyways, I don't think I really knew what that meant until these past few years. And it's not what I want to do and what I think I can do, but it's his will, and that he will give me the strength when I have none, when there's no other place to go, when there's nothing that I can do, when I am helpless. And I have been there. I have been there. Okay, I need to take a moment. I have this horrible look in my head. So it's been the power of prayer that's been my solace. And it's allowed me to survive one of the most stressful times in my life, which was the impending death and disability of my child, Lauren. On November 11th, she was maxed out on 3 pressors, and doctors would know what this means. And the blood pressure is like not even existent. And I'm thinking we're probably gonna watch my daughter code here anytime now because this is not sustainable. And they couldn't even ventilate her. She had gone into ARDS, which is acute respiratory distress syndrome. And so that definitely is a place that you don't want to be. Just like, and I don't think I was like Amy's dad. I was definitely not like Amy's dad at peace, because my child looked like she was going to die. So this is Lauren, just going through this journey with her. This is her when she's about 18 or 19. She was a ballerina, physically fit, Olympic level athlete. And she ended up stepping on a bee. And she had this whole thing unfold on her where she just became allergic to life. Anaphylaxis. This is after one of her hospitalizations. And then all the steroids, and then adrenal crises, severe adrenal failure, steroid dependent now. There's no way she can live without them. She had gotten so sick from 2020 on that she actually couldn't eat like any food without her face swelling. And so she went on TPN. That kept her alive. She had a port, and we lived like that for a year until she went through like 6 months of chemotherapy. And that allowed her to start eating again. Her immune system calmed down. And that was very helpful, except the side effects of chemo were so poor that she was transfusion dependent for blood transfusions and platelets for about 6 months. So she's had a zillion transfusions. And then she became very hypertensive from the steroids, and developed heart failure and chronic kidney disease because she had a transfusion reaction where, after so many of them, you really can develop fluid overload. She recovers, but she's still unwell. And then she developed like blindness, bilateral optic neuritis, August 2nd, 2023. It's the first day of school for the medical students. I teach at the medical school, so I knew. And I'm like, my goodness. And her first thought was, how am I gonna go to medical school if I can't read? If I can't see, I can't see. So she ends up on very high dose steroids, like chemotherapy level, higher than that. And then a few weeks later, she had a bowel perforation, probably due to the immunosuppression. So this is Lauren going through the hospitalization. The last picture is when she had stabilized a little bit a few days after. She was there 5 months, and all of this stuff that you're seeing was things that were actually iatrogenic, meaning that they were medical errors that put her in some of these places. Because the bowel perforation, multiple surgeries, the ICU that lasted 2 or 3 weeks, and the antibiotics for 6 weeks. We should have gone home then, but things just kept happening. So this is what she looked like when she went home after multiple surgeries, procedures, near-death experiences. I was so happy this day, and she was too, because you can't tell, or maybe you can, but she actually isn't sitting up on her own willpower. Has this gait belt right over here, and it took us like 30 minutes to get her in that chair. She couldn't lift her arms, she couldn't lift her legs. She actually has a foot drop. But we were about to go to an acute rehab, which she was admitted twice back from there. So then we had to go home after that because she was just too medically complex. No one would take her. So it was just a long journey. She went home in January, and really it's only been, I don't know, not even a year and a half, and she's so much better. But right before this, she had been on a ventilator for 5 weeks, and I don't know if you guys know this, but in the hospital world, if you're on a ventilator for like a couple weeks, they just want to trach and peg you and send you out. And I just would not consent to that, and Lauren wasn't consentable. So they weaned her there, and it took 5 weeks, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for my colleagues who just talked with me every day about it, and you know, for their medical acumen, but it wasn't something that I wanted for Lauren, because that just meant that she probably would die, and she almost did. So this was us leaving the hospital. I even took a picture of the van. And then this was her like a few days later. We got her into the wheelchair again, 30-40 minutes of physical labor to do that, because Lauren couldn't really sit up. And then we had to actually deadlift her over. But the goal was to get into the wheelchair and out to the table. And then this was her being reunited with Gracie. This is what, you know, her dog. This is her on any given day. That's what she looked like for months and months and months. Yes, this is what I was doing on FMLA. I was at home with my daughter, except going to clinic occasionally. And then there's this wonderful thing after 2 months.
Yeah. So now you can- Yeah.
The first time she walked, like March, 9 months later.
Yeah.
Dr. King today. I just want you guys to see the end. It's so cool. Yes. Continued recovery. This is her studying. She went back to school. And then she was able to get out to a family reunion. My mom turned 80. And then that picture right there is a picture of her and Travis, which they are getting married.
Wow.
I know. So, anyways, this is kind of a journey that we've been on. You know, just what she endured, and I, as her mother, and also as a physician, understanding what was happening, and just how faith in God and spiritual support helped me to continue. So, this is the other part of the story. I switched to Job because I read that book to her while she was in the hospital. She was hallucinating. She hallucinated for months. I heard about all sorts of weird things like a cat being there and a boy peeing on her. You know, she was just really, Lauren had even suffered a little bit of a stroke actually from hypertensive emergency when the NG tube came out and no one put it back in, and she was on a med that you would withdraw from. So she had a seizure while I was in clinic. Anyway, so she was very encephalopathic. I didn't know if she would actually ever be smart again. Um, but she is, she's probably gonna, she's fully restored. So this is the story of Job, and many of you guys know this. But if you don't, it's a book in the Bible that talks about a man who was one of God's greatest servant. He just believed in God. And the devil comes along and says, you know, he's only believing in you because life is good, you know, but you've given him everything, wealth, and he has 10 children, and he has all this flocks and everything. And, you know, God says, well, yeah, you can do whatever to Job, you just can't kill him. And he will not turn from me. And obviously Job does have some stories, you know, some words with God who sets him straight. Because, you know, he, in one day, he's pretty much taken everything, all of his children die. And then, you know, he loses everything. And then he loses his health. He has like all these boils all over his body, and he's just on the ground. And even his friends don't, they think it's from something that he did. But then, you know, he just needs this outsider to come in and say, hey, you know, you're not all that, and God is really in charge. And he realizes that, and he never really loses his faith. And then he's fully restored. And so I feel like that's what's happened with Lauren. And that is something that I needed to read and to learn and to trust, even when things look the worst. And even if death was going to be a part of that, that it was still going to be okay. And so this is Psalm 23. It's a nice Bible verse that I really love. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. I did not feel like I was in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He did refresh my soul. And so, and it's that part of walking through the valley of the shadow of death. That's where I went looking for this. And so I just put it here. So when you're in the eye of the storm, at least when I was, this is what I really felt like. I was angry sometimes, even though I tried to hide it. I was grieving incredibly. I think I was just actually really depressed. And I think I had some unforgiveness and blaming, and I'm thankful that I don't feel that way. Because again, I know for sure that everyone around me was trying to help me and tried to help my daughter. So this is where I really, I think it's because my mom prayed for me and she connected us to Father Mike, because I really needed a guide. I could not see clearly. I was so exhausted. I would spend all day at the hospital. I would come home, shower, go to bed. I would get up in the morning and spend all day in the hospital again. And I was always on the night shift when something bad would happen. And I'd come back, and then we would be back there again. And you're just physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted, spiritually exhausted. I was just exhausted. I had like nothing left. I had no strength. I wasn't eating. I could barely talk. So this is when you really do need a coach. You need someone who can tell you to eat and what not to eat, what not to think about, what to think about. So metaphorically and physically, you need a friend. I needed a friend who can see the whole picture, who's outside of that, who's not in the middle of it. So I thought of the Bible again, and a counselor as a shepherd. That having that person guide you, protect you, comfort you, to give you good food, to prepare that table for you. That person to allow your fears to be spoken about, allowing yourself to grieve. And, you know, what if things do not go well? Just keep relying on God. So this is where chaplains and that spiritual companionship that Father Dolan was talking about. And this is what I felt. And this was done by, I think, the University of Washington, or George Washington University. It's a Christian university. And with a few others. And they just kind of put this really nice diagram together. And meeting people where they are, following, not directing. I never felt that Father Mike was giving me all the answers. In fact, when we first started talking, we had this meeting every Friday. It was like our spiritual appointment. I wasn't doing anything but hanging out at the hospital anyways. And it was just one of those times where I had never been in counseling before. So I had no idea. And he goes, you just talk. And I was so numb, I think I just sat there most of the time. But it was helpful in that presence, that companionship, being and not solving. And also mobilizing my spirituality of like what I really believed in and what I needed. And I really needed that. I told all the nurses I was in trauma counseling. So, but I was. But I had a wonderful chaplain who just took it on himself to help me through this. And so then this is spiritual fruit, the things that I would like to eat, the things that I would like to see coming from my life. I don't know that I always felt that, but these are the things that came out of that. I felt an intense love for my daughter. I had joy when even a little bit was helpful, or that there was a nice nurse. I had peace, knowing that if things weren't going to turn around, that this was just what God's plan was. Forbearance, I wrote this one out because I needed to. I needed to give forbearance to anything that was wrong to my daughter, and it was all unintentional. There wasn't anything that someone intended to do that day, but there were things that definitely did happen to her. And kindness, goodness, faithfulness. I needed faithfulness, gentleness with others, and I definitely needed to find a way to control myself, because being a physician working in the hospital that my daughter is residing, I needed to exercise some self-control. So these are the things that just having a spiritual life and knowing that these exist and what God would want for us is what helped me. And my needs were mercy, grace, and forgiveness. To forgive myself, to forgive others. So this is another one about strength. God is our refuge and strength, and ever-present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear. Through the earth may give way, the mountains may fall into the hardened sea. Though the water roar and foam, and the mountains quake when they're surging. This is all about being still and knowing that I am God. Just like Job, everything fell apart for him. It was awful for him. There's a book in the Bible about him. So there was help for me in the darkness. This journey's taught me that God is sovereign, that there are people everywhere who would speak goodness and kindness into the situation. There was one person, she was from Cuba. She was a sitter for my daughter at night because she needed that, because she was so delirious that she didn't know what was going on. So someone needed to be in her room. And what she told me is all she needs is time. She's like, they don't have this type of care where I come from. If I was in Cuba and that happened to my daughter, she would be dead. And that made me go, you know what, you're right. I'm really blessed to have surgeons who operated on her, and the ICU who took care of her, and the nurses who are doing her bandages. All she needs is time. And that was God sending her to us. And when she was maxed out on all life support, I have one more thing we can try. And they proned her. and she started to, like, at least her oxygen stats were in the 80s. I was like, okay, she's settled. She'll make it through the next hour. I have one more thing we can try. Stay positive. Things will go quickly, and before you know it, she'll leave the ICU. And that was one of my colleagues. Sometimes all we have is the next minute or the next hour. And one lady, when we first came in, this is not our home. And she was a Christian respiratory therapist. And she was right next to me while Lauren came back to the ICU after she had come from surgery. We came in, she was misdiagnosed in the and the ED. She was admitted to a medicine team for abdominal pain, and she had a huge bowel perforation. So 4 hours later, being in the surgery suite for 4 or 5 hours, I don't know how long. It was like 9 o'clock at night. And the nurse or the respiratory therapist coming by saying, "This is not our home." And that actually gave me peace because I just didn't know how she was going to do. So help in the darkness, that came from the people around me. And believe it or not, with all the suffering that I was enduring and Lauren was enduring, she doesn't remember half of it, thank God. There was a huge outpouring of what other nurses and respiratory therapists and doctors and people had gone through themselves. Because I was going through this, they shared some of the hurt that they were going through, and that actually helped. Because they were vulnerable and they would have never shared some of those things. One of the ICU nurses that took care of Lauren told me about his child who died in his arms, and he understood that. And that was when Lauren was at her worst. And this wasn't even related to the bowel perforation. This was 5 months later, 5 months later that she was there. So help in the darkness, it came from others around me. So this is my toolkit for stress. And it's what I learned. Confide in someone. You need to be able to express your feelings and not keep them bottled up, and to do this regularly. A close friend or family, a counselor, a trauma counselor would be good, a pastor or a priest. Be still and know that I am God. It's really hard for me to be still. And I've always seen that quote. So I went looking for exactly where it was in the Bible. And it really is about like everything is crashing down around you, and just surrender and let God do his stuff. And it's not that you don't have to be present. You do. But it's how you're being present and what you're thinking about. So prayer, and then the Bible, there's so many places there that are so helpful for me. And I know not everyone has the same faith, so you may have something else. So this is one of the things that is now one of my favorites. To not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition and thanksgiving, present your request to God. And that the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your heart and your minds in Christ's house. And a very good one is whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Whatever you've learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put into practice, and the God of peace will be with you. And so I do that in my daily life now. We have a little reflection before we start clinic. I really appreciate that. It's like really thinking about the good of life and what we bring to it. And meditating on this is much better than meditating on the other stuff. That is not helpful. So spiritual care, many times during the hospitalization, I didn't know she'd pull through. Father Mike was a life support to me. It was literally very, very helpful. That small book on grieving that you gave me, very helpful. It's like only 80 pages. It validated my feelings. Really that small talk, mostly listening and prayer, it was an outlet for my feelings. And then the checking in frequently. It helped me cope. It helped me be present for my daughter. It gave me hope. A lot of reality checks, those were not very pleasant. Like what happens if things do not go well? I did actually have a plan, but thank God I didn't have to have that plan. I just thought I would probably leave Valley-Wise. I was even considering leaving medicine, and that wasn't God's plan. Thank goodness, because I really feel like I'm meant to be doing what I'm doing. Spiritual care helped me with companionship. It was really nice to not actually talk to another person in healthcare. No offense, but you guys are slightly different. Pastors just really have a different way of looking at things, and talking to, like, sometimes I would be so exhausted. I'm like, oh, I just have to deal with the staff again. I'm like, I know I need to talk to them and we have to talk about things, but it was exhausting for me too. I'm sure I exhausted them. Lots of complaints. And healing, spiritual prayer helped me with healing. So I learned as a parent, a caregiver, a mom, and a doctor, it's helpful to have somebody to talk to. And just sitting together sometimes were the most helpful. The prayers sustained me. The book on grief taught me that I was okay, and that to also trust in God and that He is sovereign. So this was the time I was going to ask, some things that might be helpful in your faith. I don't know if anyone wants to enter into a conversation. Go ahead.
I do. My daughter's a medical doctor as well. And I saw something that she was going through, and I said to her, you can trust God for everyone else, but can you trust God for yourself? And then I had to explain to her that God is not, has no respect of persons. You know, if He'll do it for you, or if He'll do it for that one, He'll do it for you as well. I had to build up her confidence to trust in God and to give all your issues to Him, to allow Him to lead you and to guide you, and then rest in Him, and then be assured, have faith that God will answer you in His time. It may not be today or tomorrow, but God is faithful. It actually got to the point where all of the other medical students were saying to her, is your mother still praying?
Is your mother still praying?
And Stephanie, is she praying? And my daughter would call and say, Mom, are you praying? Everybody wants to know if you're praying, because you know the journey that they were on. You have to trust God to do it for you as well.
Yes, I agree with that. Anyone else want to enter? Go ahead.
I just know that nothing quite as involved as what you went through, Tina, but just a terrible time, and I was institutionalized in some difficult time, but just to embrace those truths that you spoke about, and it's the group therapy, and yeah, the people speaking into it, of course, but just embracing in the scripture you put up there, which is I can do all things. And I'm reminded, and through in that therapy, that He says, when I am weak, He is strong. So it's amazing, and you leading today in your weakness and in your vulnerability, you have to, it's counterintuitive to believe that is greatly powerful.
Well, if it helps even one person, it helped me a lot to put it through. I processed a lot. I'm thankful. I'm a different person than I was a couple of years ago. And I'm thankful for it. I've seen a lot of suffering in my lifetime, walking alongside of patients. This one was the worst suffering I'd ever encountered because it was my daughter. I wish I could have switched places with her. It was very, very painful. Yes.
I think it's worth commenting on the change that took place in
Oh, and
Lauren.
Lauren, oh my goodness.
terms of her spiritual walk.
Oh, Lauren helped me put this together. We were just sitting on the couch, and it just like the words of God just kept coming out of her. And I'm like, I'm writing that one down. I'm writing that one down. Yeah, she's an amazing person of faith, and she's grown an incredible amount. And yes, she has scars on her body, but her heart is so bright, and it's just beautiful. And God's just going to use her in such a special way. So yes, she's changed so much, so much through this.
How can you not?
I know. You're like, I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to be alive. And what am I going to do with this day? It's very empowering. So what helped me? The verse of the day. This helps me. It's a habit that I formed over the last few years going through this. I almost feel like if I don't do it, there's going to be catastrophe or something, but maybe that's just my own OCD or something. But it really allows me to just take a moment and listen to God's word, listen to what He has to say to me, and pray for patients I'm going to see that day, the people that I'm going to run into. And I know none of it's by accident. And I look through and I'm like, oh, thank you, God. I had forgotten about that person, and you had them come right across me right in time for that thing to get done. And so, just, having that blessing over the day, not that everything's gonna go right, because things don't go right all the time. We know that. And then the Our Father, that one was a prayer I just couldn't even stop. I think that one is just like so seated in my life since I was a child. That was probably the first thing that I learned from the Bible was Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, as we forgive those who trespass, trespass against us. And lead us not, we forgive those, we forgive us who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation. You got it. Deliver us from evil. Anyways, I would say that over and over again because I just kept saying, okay, it's whatever's your will, whatever's your will, because that's all I could do. And those were the only words that would come from me. I couldn't listen to any secular music going through this
Yeah.
at all. I couldn't, it would just hurt in my ears. The only thing I could listen to was Christian music. And there was this song called Just Hold On by Katie Nicole that kind of came into play. If you ever get a chance, listen to it. She's so passionate. It would just make me sob listening to it. My husband finally, not finally, he put some Christian music on his cell phone, and he just found this song like a week ago, and he's like, "You gotta listen to this," and I'm like, "Oh, that's been carrying me." But anyways, the music, the prayer, and then counseling. Had never done it before, and I highly recommend it. So what were those sessions like? It's kind of word vomiting, and it gets the sickness out of you because there is some sickness that goes on in your own mind. Like you start thinking of thoughts that you should not be thinking. You meditate on the wrong things. And so it allows you to release anger, like errors in healthcare that gave me anger, pain, physical and psychological, and suffering, seen and unseen, and grief, my response to everything. And I needed to acknowledge it, or it was going to swallow me. And I would say, if you're going through something bad, it may swallow you if you don't acknowledge your feelings. And then it allowed me to ask the next step questions like, what do I do now? And what came out of that is grace, extending it to myself and to others around me, and forgiveness, letting go of things. And that was really healing for me. So grace was what I was giving to another and maybe myself, and forgiveness, even though it was about something, but what I gave to myself. And without that, I would have shriveled away in grief, anger, and bitterness, and then I would have been left with nothing. I really would have, but God didn't have that for me. My mother prayed, and Father Mike came uninvited, actually. He just said, "I'm coming to your house. I'm coming to the hospital." I didn't invite him, he just came, and I'm thankful for that. And goodness and mercy came from that. And this is just, if you dwell in God's house, that even though the storms will come, he will still stand. This is Lauren today. This is a great picture of her. She actually looks even prettier now. Her hair is like a lot longer. And she just graduated from college this summer, summa cum laude in biochemistry. I keep saying that like a proud mom. And she's had more medical problems. We went through some more surgeries this summer, but it was nothing like it was before, thank God. And then she just took the MCAT like a couple of weeks ago because she wants to go to medical school. And she is really smart enough to go, so I'm really thankful for that. So we'll see what happens with that, if that's God's will, or go on and get a PhD, one of those things. So just, reflecting on this, when the next storm will come, how will you equip yourself? For me, it's daily reflection and storing up God's word in my heart, storing up strength for the next storm, and experiencing life with a sense of gratitude, being thankful, that habit of gratitude and thankfulness, and eating that fruit of the Spirit and being that fruit of the Spirit for others, as well as sharing that with others. Like that's how to equip those relationships, kindness, goodness, thankfulness, self-control. And so that kind of brings me to the end. This is the inspiration for this talk, life, what happened. The Bible, that's my biggest source. Although I did look a few things up, and obviously having a spiritual counselor, Father Mike, that really helped me a lot. And Lauren, and the staff, people that he'd never even met, saw that and inspired them to seek resources. And these were some articles I looked for, it's everywhere. It's not just in healthcare that we need this, but specifically that was what we were talking about today. And so I'm supposed to remind you that you have CME credit for this. Okay, and that's my email.